This is 7-5 special products. So we're going to be talking about perfect square trinomials and difference of two squares. In order to see if something is a perfect square trinomial, you want to see if the first and last terms are a form of a squared and b squared. So basically that they're perfect squares, and that the middle term is 2 times a times b, or negative 2 times a times b. And I'll show you what that looks like. So determine if this is a perfect square determine whether each trinomial is a perfect square. If so, factor it. If not, explain. So what this means is we want to see is the first term here, is this a perfect square? And is the last term a perfect square? If they are perfect squares, you take the square root of them. Well, this first one, the square root of that is 3x. And the square root of 64 is 8. That's what makes them perfect squares, because they came out as whole numbers. And then you see if that middle term is 2 times a, which is the 3x, times the b, which is 8. And so is that middle term 48x? No, it's not, so it's not a perfect square. And so we can't factor it either. Okay, the next one. Is the first term a perfect square? Yes, the square root of it is 9x. Is 25 a perfect square? Yes, the square root of that is 5. And so from there, we want to see if the middle term is 2 times 9x times 5. Well, 2 times 9 is 18, times 5 is 90x. And that's what is here in the middle, the 90x. So this is a perfect square. And the way you factor it is you take the sign, the first operation that you see, which is a plus sign, and then you take the first term that was square rooted and the last, and then you put a little squared next to it. Okay, let's look at example 2. A square piece of cloth must be cut to make a tablecloth. The area needed is 16x squared minus 24x plus 9. The dimensions of the cloth are the form cx minus d. It's a minus because there's a minus right here, the first operation. Where c and d are whole numbers. Find an expression for the perimeter of the cloth. Okay, so if the area was this, then two things multiplied to that trinomial. So let's take a look and see if we can do a perfect square. So 16x squared, the square root of that is 4x. 9, the square root of that is 3. And then we see if 2 times 4x times 3 will equal 24x. So 2 times 4x is 8x, times 3 is 24x. It is. So I actually just put a minus sign because I take the first operation and I square that. So 4x minus 3 squared is what got me to my answer. So that means that every side of the square is equal to, oops, that's geometry. You guys don't need those symbols. You'll see that next year. Every side is equal to 4x minus 3. So to find the perimeter, when x is 11, we'll plug 11 in here. 4 times 11 is 44. Minus 3 is 41. So every side is 41 inches. So what's the perimeter going to be? 41 times 4. So 164 inches is the perimeter. Now, difference of two squares. Well, this is only a binomial. So we have a binomial here. Difference meaning it has a subtraction sign. That's what difference is in math. The difference of two numbers would be subtracting. And the two squares. So I need to see if these are perfect squares. Well, 3a squared is not a perfect square. The a squared is, but not the 3. So this one is not a difference of two squares. So we can't factor it. And the next one, I see that it has a minus sign. That's good. So there's a difference. And it is a binomial. And I'm seeing if this is a perfect square or if that one's a perfect square. So 100x squared, well, the square root of that is 10x. And 4y squared, the square root of that is 2y. So then you write it, difference of two squares is going to have two binomials next to each other. One of them is going to have a plus 2y, and one is going to be minus. Difference, they're going to have different signs. Remember that. Difference of two squares have different signs when you write the final answer. Okay, here's a few more to try. So x to the fourth, well, that's x squared times x squared. So that the square root of that is x squared. And 25y to the sixth, that would be 5y to the third. Anytime you have an even power, it works. You could take the square root of that, and it's actually just cutting the number in half. Okay, so I'm going to need this and a plus sign, and then I write it again with a minus sign. So my next one, the 1. Well, 1 times 1 is 1, so the square root of that is 1. 4x squared, the square root of that would be 2x. It's an even power, and we just take half of it. And I need my different signs. You could check with FOIL to make sure these are working.